Oh, you ever have one of those neighbors who thinks the neighborhood rules were personally written by the founding fathers and enforced by divine authority? Yeah. Meet Karen, the self-appointed sheriff of our HOA, part-time drama queen and full-time headache. The story kicks off on a sunny Saturday morning. I was in my garage minding my own business, polishing up my old lawnmower and humming to some classic rock when I saw her, Karen, marching across the cul-de-sac with a clipboard in hand like she was leading an FBI raid. She had that determined squint. The one that means someone is about to have a very bad day. I already knew she'd been on a power trip lately. Last week, she fined old Mr. Jenkins for having unapproved lawn decorations. The decorations. 2 pink flamingos. Jenkins is 82 and partially blind. He thought it was a joke. Karen didn't. So when I saw her glance toward my backyard, I just knew today was my turn. Now, here's a little context. I have a shed. Not a fancy one. Just a decent-sized weatherproof metal shed where I keep tools, some fishing gear, and an embarrassing collection of broken lawn mower parts one swear I'll fix someday. The shed is on my property line, perfectly legal, and approved years before Karen even moved here. But Karen had this new idea that all exterior structures needed to be HOA aesthetic compliant. Basically, it needed to match the color of her house. Spoiler, it doesn't. Anyway, I saw her circling near my fence like a hawk scoping out prey. I leaned out of the garage and said, "Morning, Karen. Need something?" She gave that fake neighborly smile, the one that could curdle milk, and said, "Just performing a compliance inspection. We've had reports of unauthorized activity behind your property." I couldn't help but laugh. Karen, the only unauthorized activity back there is me trying to start a 15-year-old weed whacker, but she didn't laugh. She scribbled something on her clipboard, adjusted her oversized sunglasses, and said, "We'll see about that." That should have been my warning. Later that afternoon, I went inside to grab lunch, leaving the shed locked as usual. What I didn't know was that Karen wasn't done. She must have waited until I went inside because about 20 minutes later, I heard this faint clank, then another. At first, I thought maybe it was the wind. Then, beep beep beep. That sound. Oh, that glorious sound. My shed alarm. See, a few months ago, someone had been snooping around stealing garden equipment in the area. So, I installed a motion alarm system, a loud siren paired with a notification alert linked directly to the local police department. Because apparently I trust robots more than HOA board members. I ran outside just in time to see my shed door swing open. And there she was, Karen. She was standing there like a burglar caught red-handed. One hand still on the door handle, the other clutching her clipboard like it was a shield. "This structure violates Section 8B, she blurted out, her voice shaking somewhere between outrage and panic. And then the alarm went off at full blast. Not the cute kind of alarm. This one screamed like a banshee with a megaphone. The kind that could wake up the next town over. Karen jumped back 3 feet, nearly tripping over her own shoes. I couldn't help it. I burst out laughing. "Karen, you broke into my shed." She yelled back, "It's community property inspection." But her voice was barely audible over the siren. And that's when I heard the second sound. The unmistakable whoop of a police siren. You see, my alarm wasn't just loud. It also automatically called dispatch when the door was opened without my key fob. Within minutes, 2 squad cars pulled up. Blue and red lights flashing. Officers stepping out like this was an episode of Cops HOA edition. Karen froze completely. "Ma'am, step away from the shed," one officer commanded. Karen's face went pale. No, this is a misunderstanding. I'm the HOA president." The officer looked at me, then at her. "Sir, is this your property?" "Yep," I said, trying not to grin. "And she just broke into my shed." Karen's mouth dropped open. "It was an inspection without permission," the officer asked, raising an eyebrow. Karen stuttered. "Well, technically," the cop cut her off. "Technically, that's trespassing." I wish I had a camera because the look on her face, pure disbelief, like someone just told her Starbucks ran out of soy milk. The officers ran her ID, and while they didn't haul her off in cuffs sadly, they did give her a formal warning for trespassing and told her to leave immediately. As she stomped away, I couldn't resist. "Next time, Karen," I called out. "Maybe just send me an email first." She didn't reply, but the death glare she threw me could have melted steel. That night, my phone blew up with messages from neighbors. Apparently, word had spread faster than wildfire. The entire block now knew that the almighty HOA president got caught breaking into someone's shed and had the cops called on her. And that was only the beginning. Because if you think Karen learned her lesson that day, oh no, she was just getting started. You'd think after getting caught red-handed by the police, most people would take a step back, maybe even apologize. But this is Karen we're talking about. The woman who once argued with a mailman because his truck didn't match the neighborhood color palette. The morning after the shed incident, I found a bright orange envelope taped to my front door. In giant bold letters, it read notice of HOA violation. I laughed before I even opened it. I mean, what could it possibly say this time? Inside, written in overly formal legalese that probably came from Google, was this gem? Homeowner is in violation of HOA Article 7 Section D for installing a motion-activated alarm system that disrupts neighborhood tranquility. Neighborhood tranquility. I almost spit out my coffee. She was seriously trying to find me for protecting my own shed from her, but I played it cool. I knew this was her way of saving face after the police call, and honestly, I was curious how far she'd take it. So, I did what any sane petty homeowner would do. I framed the notice and hung it in my living room. Later that day, Karen showed up again. I saw her through my security camera, which, by the way, I'd recently upgraded because at this point, I was documenting everything. She marched up my driveway holding another clipboard, muttering something under her breath like a villain rehearsing her monologue. She knocked. I opened the door just enough to be polite. "Afternoon, Karen," I said, keeping my tone sweet enough to give her cavities. She lifted her chin. "I'm here to discuss your violation. You can't just install surveillance devices without board approval. They make the neighborhood feel unsafe." I blinked. "Unsafe? You broke into my shed. The alarm went off because of you." "That's beside the point," she snapped. "You're disrupting the peace, Karen," I said, smiling. "The only thing I'm disrupting is your sense of entitlement." That hit a nerve. Her nostrils flared so hard I thought she might pass out. She stormed off, shouting, "This isn't over, Mark. You'll hear from the board." And boy did I. The next week, I got a certified letter summoning me to an emergency HOA disciplinary hearing. I almost fell out of my chair laughing. An emergency hearing over a shed alarm. But here's where the story gets beautiful. See, unbeknownst to Karen, a few neighbors had gotten tired of her antics, too. Mr. Jenkins, the flamingo guy, and Lisa from across the street, who Karen once tried to fine for using non-regulation mulch, decided to show up for moral support. When I arrived at the meeting, Karen was sitting at the front like a judge in a reality show. 3 other board members sat beside her, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. She cleared her throat dramatically. "Mr. Davis," she began, "you've violated multiple HOA policies by installing unauthorized alarm systems and recording devices." I folded my arms. "You mean the alarm that went off when you trespassed on my property?" A small chuckle escaped from one of the board members. "Karen shot him a death stare," she continued. "This community thrives on harmony, and your behavior, calling the police on the HOA president, was completely inappropriate." At that point, even I had to ask, "Wait, you're saying me calling the police after you broke into my shed is a problem?" She stood, pointing her pen at me like a sword. "Yes, because you made this community look bad." I leaned back, smiling. "Oh, I made it look bad. Or did the HOA president getting caught trespassing by 2 police officers make it look bad?" The room went silent. Then, from the back, Mr. Jenkins spoke up. "Karen, you fined half the street for nonsense. Maybe it's time someone called you out." The other neighbors murmured in agreement. Even one of the board members nodded. Karen's face turned the color of an overripe tomato. She tried to regain control, flipping through her papers like a lawyer on TV. "This hearing is about his misconduct, not mine." That's when Lisa pulled out her phone. "Actually," she said, "I recorded the whole thing last week. The moment you opened his shed door, you could hear a pin drop." Lisa hit play. The video showed Karen yanking open my shed, the alarm blaring, and me yelling from across the yard. You could even hear the sirens in the background. Karen lunged for the phone. "You can't record me without permission." Lisa smirked. "Neither can you trespass without permission." The board looked stunned. The head treasurer cleared his throat and said, "Karen, this looks really bad." She stammered something about community safety, but at that point, everyone knew it was over. The treasurer finally turned to me. "Mr. Davis, you're not in violation of anything. In fact, your alarm probably prevented a crime," Karen gasped. "What crime?" He shrugged, breaking and entering. That was it. The room erupted in laughter. Even the board members couldn't hold it in. Karen stormed out, slamming the door so hard a picture frame fell off the wall. As I left, Jenkins patted my shoulder and said, "Son, I haven't laughed that hard in 20 years." I walked home grinning, knowing the whole neighborhood had just watched Karen's self-proclaimed authority crumble in front of everyone. But the best part, the real twist was still coming. Because Karen wasn't done yet. Oh no, she had one last master plan and it involved the police again. After the disciplinary hearing fiasco, you'd think Karen would crawl back into whatever hole HOA Karens go to when they're defeated. But no, not this one. Karen doesn't lose. She plots. For a few peaceful days, things were quiet. No orange envelopes, no passive-aggressive notes, not even a glare from across the street. I started to think maybe, just maybe, the alarm and the public embarrassment had knocked some sense into her. But then on a cloudy Thursday afternoon, I got a knock at the door. Not a neighborly knock, a police knock. 2 officers stood there, serious as could be. One of them said, "Mr. Davis, we received a report about stolen HOA property possibly being stored in your shed." I almost laughed right there. You're kidding, right? They weren't. Karen had filed an official police report claiming that I had taken HOA-owned lawn equipment and hidden it in my suspicious metal shed. Suspicious. My shed was suspicious now. I took a deep breath, trying not to burst out laughing in their faces. "Officers, you're welcome to take a look. Just be careful. The shed's got a motion alarm." They nodded and we walked out back. Karen was standing across the street, arms folded, watching like some villain waiting for her evil plan to unfold. She even had her phone out recording, probably thinking this was her moment of triumph. The officers approached the shed. I disabled the alarm with my fob and opened the door wide. Inside, just the usual: rakes, a mower, fishing rods, an old cooler, and one very dusty leaf blower that hadn't worked since 2015. The taller officer stepped inside, looked around, and came back out. "Mr. Davis, everything here looks normal," I grinned. "Yeah, unless the HOA started issuing rusty screwdrivers as company property." The shorter officer glanced at his notepad. The complainant said the missing item was a new riding lawn mower belonging to the HOA maintenance fund. That's when I couldn't help it. I laughed so hard I had to hold on to the fence. A riding mower. "Officer, my shed isn't even big enough to fit one." The cops looked at each other, clearly realizing how ridiculous this was. Then the taller one said, "Mr. Davis, do you mind if we confirm with the HOA records?" "Please do," I said, still chuckling. They radioed in, and within minutes, it became painfully clear that there wasn't any missing HOA mower. In fact, the HOA's maintenance guy confirmed they'd sold their old one months ago through Karen's approval. When the officers turned to her, the color drained from her face. "Ma'am, we're going to need to ask you some questions." Karen fumbled for words. "I must have gotten the information wrong. I was just trying to protect the community." The shorter officer sighed. "Filing a false police report isn't protecting anyone, ma'am." She tried to backpedal. "It wasn't false. Maybe I was misinformed." But the officers weren't buying it. They asked her to step aside and started taking her statement. Meanwhile, the entire neighborhood began to trickle out of their houses, drawn by the flashing lights and Karen's meltdown. Mr. Jenkins was the first to shout, "What'd she do this time? Steal her own fine notices?" The laughter rippled through the crowd. Karen looked like she wanted to vanish into the pavement. Then the officer handed me a copy of the report and said quietly, "You might want to keep this for your records. Looks like you've got quite a situation here." "Don't worry," I said. "At this point, I'm thinking of turning it into a Netflix documentary." They left after giving Karen a formal citation for filing a false report. Not an arrest, sadly, but still public and official enough to sting her pride like salt in a wound. The best part, the whole scene was caught on my security cameras again. And remember Lisa, the neighbor who recorded the shed incident? Yeah, she posted this one too. By the next morning, the video had gone viral on the neighborhood Facebook group. The title, "HOA Karen tries to frame neighbor, gets busted by police again." The comments were gold. "Protect this man at all costs. Petition to make him the new HOA president. Someone please get this Karen a hobby." By the end of the week, Karen resigned for personal reasons. Translation: she couldn't walk down the street without someone humming a police siren at her. The HOA board held a special election. And guess who they nominated to take her place? Yours truly. I didn't even want the position at first, but after everything, it felt poetic. The guy she tried to destroy now running the very organization she used to terrorize people with. So yeah, I accepted my first act as president. I passed a new rule. No one under any circumstances is allowed to enter another homeowner's property without permission. We called it the Karen Clause. These days, the neighborhood is peaceful. People smile. Lawns are messy but loved. And no one's afraid of orange envelopes anymore. And that old shed still standing strong, motion alarm and all. Sometimes I walk by, pat it on the side, and whisper, "Good job, buddy. You took down a tyrant." If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Every single subscription motivates me to bring you even more exciting and dramatic HOA stories. And don't forget to tap the bell icon so you never miss a new upload. I'll see you in the next story where justice gets even more satisfying.